So we have some new tricks with arrays and objects. Let's see if we can use those to make our code even more satisfyingly structured. So as I said, what we're really doing here is we've got some data that gets submitted, and we want to keep our user interface in sync with our data. Because one of these days, it'd be cool if like that data synced with something, or if it didn't go away when we refresh the page and that kind of stuff. So I want to try to manage my data somehow. So as a step in that direction, what if we treated this flick data that gets submitted as an object? Like, it is a flick, right? This whole thing is a flick. So after we submit this thing, maybe what I do is I create a flick object here that has a property name with the value f.flickName.value, and a property called Chris, which is f.chrisName.value. And I like to have my trailing comma there. If I point that out, you can always put the comma after the last item in an object. Did we talk about objects or just arrays? We didn't talk about objects. Oh, you poor souls. You missed on the good stuff. But never mind. I don't even know what that means. Objects. Yeah, we got to get into objects. All right. Arrays are all fun and games, but objects are where it's at, Bubba. Let's make us some objects. Okay, how do I make objects? We make arrays with square brackets, so how do we make objects? Anybody know? We had to use some objects if you got all the way through Code Wars, right? You had to kind of look some of that stuff up. Who knows how to make an object? Somebody knows. Somebody's just not telling. Who knows how to make an object? All right, tell us all about it, Sadie. It is indeed. So, how about, let me see here. Get my notes so this doesn't happen again. Foods. Yeah, an object. So it's a key value pair, like a dictionary in Python or a hash in Ruby, if you know any of those things, an associative array in PHP. It's called different things in different languages. But it's a bunch of keys and values. So, for example, key value. What'd you have for breakfast, Mimi? What kind? Sausage, egg, and cheese. Yeah. Sausage, egg, and cheese twammages. All right. So the keys are always strings. The values can be absolutely anything. They can be strings, they can be numbers, they can be arrays, they can be other objects. They can even be functions. So it could be a number, like calories, 290, or something like that. We can make a list of our favorite proteins. Eggs, what? Peanut butter. And as I mentioned before, I forgot that I hadn't told you about this at all. You can always leave the trailing comma there in the last one, which I tend to do, so that when I come back and add another item, I don't forget to go back and add it on the line above, because inevitably I forget to do that and then I get an error. So I like to leave that trailing comma there. And yes, you can do that in an array as well. Yeah?
Isn't JavaScript the only language that allows this to happen mercifully, whereas other languages you have to go through an entire complicated process to actually even do anything remotely like that?
I wouldn't say it's the only language like that. No, Ruby you can do objects this easily. Just so if I come back here and put something else after it, I don't forget to go put the comma on the line above. So you can just leave it there even though there's nothing after it. So these are the keys, or the properties. These are the property names. These are the property values. So collectively, each line is a property. And each property has a property name and a value. And the property names, the keys are always strings. But I don't have quotes around them, right? But I could. You could totally put quotes around these. Yes, it's the same idea. So, so these are really strings, even though I haven't put quotation marks there. You totally could put the quotation marks there. But as long as you follow like the naming rules for a variable name, you don't have to. So no spaces, no dashes, don't start it with a number, stuff like that. Then you don't have to use the quotes. But absolutely any string could be a key. So you could put something with a string in it. So Ada, what'd you have for lunch? Noodles. Ada's lunch with a space in it. Noodles. Totally valid. I like to leave that trailing comma there. Cool. So how do I access a property? How do I get one of those out of there? How do I get that number of calories out of there? How do I get 290 out of there? What do you think? Yeah, Logan. Foods dot calories. Gosh darn right I would. Totally works. So again, if your property names, if your keys follow the rules for naming variables, you can use dot syntax like this. Because remember, calories is really a string. So if you don't name them that way, like Ada's lunch there, I can't obviously say foods dot Ada's lunch like that. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? So what would I do then? There's another way of getting the properties out of an object. Anybody know? Like using what? Yes to the first part, no to the second part. So they are not in any particular order. So keep that in mind. They're random access. So, but you can use square brackets and pass in a key. So you could pass in the string like this. And it doesn't have to be one with a funny name. I messed that up though. I forgot my. Yeah. There you go. Noodles. So it doesn't have to be one that you didn't follow the rules for. I could also just totally say console log, foods, square bracket, the string proteins. That totally works. So you can always use square brackets, and sometimes you can use the dot. So you can only use the dot if you followed the naming rules. Yeah. This. We're going to answer that question in about 20 minutes. We're going to try. I don't know that this is ever going to stop being totally confusing altogether, but we're going to try to. Okay, that's enough. Thank you. So that's how we get stuff out of an object. So what if I had a variable? Let property equal the string breakfast. Now how can I get that? How can I use that? Because I have breakfast up here, right? What would I do? Yep. Yep. So foods brackets property. I couldn't say foods dot property, right? Because that would actually look for a property named the string property, right? So that doesn't work. We could totally pass that variable in square brackets, and that works. And that'll be breakfast. So when you're using the dot, the thing after the dot has to be the actual string that is the key. If you have a variable or something, or it's a string that you have to use quotes for, then you're going to have to put it inside square brackets. So remember this. Remember this trick that we just used. because we're going to use that in our application. So hopefully it won't explode as many mines then because we did it now. Yeah.
Is there a reason why it doesn't come with brackets with this one? And you make let property with brackets instead of just going with 15 with brackets on it? Like you see what I mean? Like it only has X and peanut butter in brackets, but when you have when you have foods property, it only has sausage, egg, cheese, cheese.
Because proteins is an array. Right. That's not a string. That's an array. So it's before it prints it to the console, it turns it into a string. Yeah. Yeah. It's a different data type. Yeah.
What happens if you were to like console log
Like the whole object?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the case of console log, I don't know because console logging an object, it just depends on the implementation of the console. In this case, yeah, it just kind of prints it out as a string. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Why is it printed like,
Hmm?
why is it printed out of order?
Because there is no order. Yeah, the order in which we added is not the order in which it's necessarily going to come out. Yep, they are not ordered unlike arrays. So that's how we access an existing property. How about adding a whole new property? Good guess. Also reasonable guess. How about just an equal sign? You just access the property and set it equal to something. It doesn't matter that it's not there yet. So what if I say foods dot pasta equals hold on here, who haven't I pestered? Kelly, I've left you alone. No more. What's your favorite pasta?
Fettuccine Alfredo.
Oh, yeah. Fettuccine Alfredo. Already. Fettuccine already. All right. Alfredo. Oh, my gosh. Alfredo. Yeah, that totally works. Does it really? Yeah, it does. So, of course, we could do that with square brackets too, right? What's for dinner tonight? Have I bugged you? Well, the time has come. Vedant, what's for dinner tonight?
Really don't know. I'm gonna go with a sandwich.
Really? So I could totally do this, right? Twammaches. All right. Totally works. Doesn't matter that I used square brackets here and the dot here, right? It's the same thing. So adding a property. So I said that the properties could be absolutely anything. They could be a string. They could be a number. They could be an array. They could be another object. They could be a function. Heck yeah, they could. So let's see. Is it all true? If I just said foods.eat equals a function. Nom nom. Does that really work? Nom nom. Gosh darn right it does. And we have a very special name for functions that just happen to be properties of objects. What are those called? What are functions that are properties of objects? A function that you call with a dot. You said it earlier.
Class. No.
You said is class list a... Yeah, method. Right? That's all right, sorry. It's because I thought it'd already be on the tip of your tongue. Sorry, I wasn't trying to make you miserable. When I try to make you miserable, you'll know. I would never do that. So yeah, a function that happens to be the property of an object is a method. It depends. So in some languages like Java, where everything's on an object, then I don't think you really have functions that aren't methods. Yeah. So in this case, though, we have functions that are totally disconnected from from objects. So what happens? Yeah,
Is there a recursion with objects?
you can have objects within objects. Yeah,
Okay.
because the property can be absolutely anything, including more objects.
Can you call an object?
If yo dog, I heard you like objects. Yeah.
Can you call the object within itself? Or whatever needs it?
Yes, and we will do just that when we start going back to our project. No, yes, and you should be excited. It's very good. All right. What if you want to list all the keys, all the property names in an object? Seems like a thing you might want to do. If you actually went all the way through your code wars and did the mirror object problem, then you probably had to do this. Andrew? If only. It's not quite just that, but that's what it should be. It should just be like list all the keys, property names. I wish it were just foods.keys, but it's not. It's object.keys, and you pass it foods. Yeah, so let's console log that. So that will give you all of the keys as an array. Breakfast, calories, proteins, ate as lunch, pasta, dinner, eat. Yeah, including any methods. So if you ever need to iterate over those, you could always call object.keys and then call for each on that, which you might want to keep in mind for a question that I'm going to be asking you before too terribly long. So we said the keys all have to be strings, right? They're always going to be strings. Yeah,
This is it. I had a question about the function.
sure, go ahead.
Would it work if you said function, function, foods dot, whatever you call it, if you didn't have it set equal to a variable, but you just had that as the name?
I'm not sure I quite understand.
So if you scroll up,
Where's eat? Where is that thing? Oh, here it is.
so you set it equal to a variable, but if you, and made it anonymous, but if you just said function, foods dot eat,
Okay. No, you couldn't just name it foods.eat, but I could have said like I could do this. Oh my gosh. That works. Yeah, no, you can't just name it that. You have to use an assignment operator.
So foods.eat is the same, or creating foods.eat equals function and then create the function or defining it. Is that the same thing as like saying function eat and then defining the function?
Except that it's a method on the foods object. It's the same as if when I first created that object up here, I had another one here that said eat, like that. Same thing.
So the difference between those two, what I just said, is that would that cause an issue with scope? Like if I were to say foods.eat equals a function,
Like
if
this.
function eat, that would be like available everywhere, and then foods.eat would only be available with object of food.
No, it's just the way you access it is different, which then I could like pass that foods object around and that function would go with it, right? So it also has to do with the value of this, which we're going to be wrestling with, right? So that's different inside a method than it is inside other functions, as we're going to see. All right, so we said the keys have to be strings, right? So what happens if you try to do something else? Non-string keys. Const dinos. You got your Stegosaurus. You got your Ankylosaurus. No one said Ankylosaurus this time. That's very sad. There's a Y in there, isn't there? Ankylosaurus? Ankylosaurus, yeah. So now what? How do I say foods square bracket dinos equals what? Let's get my list of keys here. Not dinos. I meant foods. So it just converted it to a string. it just happily took my array and I bet you meant a string because you tried to use an array where a string is required. It'd be nice if it just said type error, but it doesn't. It says, I'll just convert that to a string for you. That's probably what you meant, which probably isn't what you meant, but that's what will happen.
How is that not? I thought in JavaScript they don't care if you use a single or a double quote.
They don't?
How is it not a string array?
What's that? Oh, this?
It was an array.
Yeah, Diners was an array, right. Yeah, yeah. So every object in JavaScript has a toString function or a toString method built in, by the way. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want. For example, console log foods toString. Now, what might be a good thing for that to turn into? Kind of like that representation with the curly braces and all that stuff, right? Here's what we get. The string square bracket object square bracket. So every object is going to turn into that string. So that's pretty useless. And that's going to bite us probably tomorrow as we try to do something. All right. Now we know about arrays and objects.